Diolch and Dhanyavad in advance. I find myself between Wales, where I live, and India, where I spend so much of my time. It's a great delight to me. So, dear brothers and sisters, Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim, and homage to our precious teacher, Urgyen Sangharakshita. And it's he who taught me, and no doubt all of you, how to go forth, how to go beyond. Especially, of course, in terms of going for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Because, of course, going forth and going beyond are modalities of going for refuge to the three jewels. Interesting, I think that needs drawing out more in our context here. And, well, we're all here because we go for refuge to the three jewels in the same understanding as Bhante has. Our preceptors, if it weren't Bhante, their going for refuge, their understanding of going for refuge coincided with Bhante's, and therefore yours coincides with Bhante's. That's why we're here, what brings us together. And I'm sure that everybody remembers so well their own ordination. My own private ordination is sort of still going on. I don't find it at all hard to just be back there in that shrine room, somewhere in Thetford Forest, not very far from here, in a small bedroom that had been quickly converted, which then became a completely timeless space. I stepped into it. Bhante was sitting there. He'd always been sitting there, and he was something quite beyond an ordinary human being. And what took place was something on another level altogether, which is still going on, which has been the guiding force of my life, and still is, and always will be, I'm quite convinced. I remember sitting there completely awed, in a sense, nothing in my mind, totally receptive, and deeply in touch with my essential purpose in life, which still is what drives me, still what moves me. So I think it's very important indeed that we reconnect with our own ordinations again and again and again. And especially I remember the strong sense of going forth, of leaving behind everything that I'd been sort of brought up to be and to do, and to dedicate myself to something completely beyond all that. And in going forth, for me, it's inextricably connected with going beyond. You can only go forth when you're going beyond, if you see. You can only go beyond by going forth. They're two sides of the same coin, and they're both, as I say, modalities of going for refuge to the three jewels. I remember that in the lead up to the ordination, Bhante had connected, especially the private ordination, with death. That was a very strong theme. And certainly ever since then, when I was doing ordinations, I used to stress that at the private ordination. This is a kind of death, that you're leaving this life, this old life, and entering a new one. And that theme of death in connection with going for refuge to the three jewels has been very, very present to me right from the start. I engaged with Buddhism, especially under the influence of certain chemicals, in the context of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And the whole theme of dying and going beyond this life to something far vaster, something impossible to really put a name to, has been the essence of my own spiritual life. Bhante, of course, connected the theme of death with the third stage of his system of meditation, the stage of spiritual death. And especially I've experienced that in terms of the six-element practice, that through doing that practice, I'm learning to die. I'm learning to let go of myself. I'm learning to let go of everything that I'm attached to. Well, my years have advanced. I'm now in my 75th year, and I won't say that death is more imminent than it's ever been, because of course it's been imminent from the moment I stepped from the womb, crawled from the womb, was dragged from the womb. I won't claim to have taken 7 steps, but it's been a very strong theme in my whole spiritual life. And as I'm getting older, I'm more and more remembering, this may be my last convention. I may never come to such a gathering again. This may be my last visit to India, maybe for other reasons too. But I may never be able to do so many of the things I do. I may not get up in the morning. This is always with me. And for me, it's the main way in which going forth, going beyond, going for refuge is mediated. And I keep seeing my attachments and thinking, there's no point. They're going to go. I'm going to leave them. So it's a very, very powerful way of focusing my understanding of what we're doing together. And Bhante was always my prime example all the way through the time that I knew him, right from the start. Had a rocky patch at one point, but even that I learned from. And especially towards the end, Bhante often was sort of talking with a skull on the desk. Literally, he had a skull, a Mexican skull, of course, on his desk in Adhisthana. But it was as if all the time he was thinking of death, and he'd constantly say things like, well, if I'm here next time, or something like that. It's evident that for 10, 15 years, he was thinking of dying. But right towards the end, my experience of Bhante was very different. I think especially the last 2 years, Bhante became more and more ethereal, is the best way I can put it. No doubt quite a number of you have read War and Peace, and you'll remember the death scene with Prince Andrei, which is one of the most wonderful pieces of writing in literature in general. But Prince Andrei is dying, and he's far distant from everything, and is looking at the world from a completely beyond perspective. Well, that was the sense you got with Bhante. He was completely with you, he's present completely with you. At the same time, he was somewhere else. He was beyond. And even at the last sort of year or so, he said to me the absolutely deeply shocking words, I don't really mind if the order collapses. I don't think he meant, I couldn't care less, I'm dying soon, that doesn't bother me. I don't think he meant that. I think what he meant was the order is the manifestation of something more profound, more deep, more deep in reality itself, and that has been evoked, that has been brought into existence. And at the moment, the order manifests that, but if it no longer manifests it, that will continue. That's the way I took it. I'm sure he did not mean I don't care about the order, but just that he cared about something that the order expressed more than the actual manifestation, so to speak. But that was the mood of the man at that stage. And when he did come to die, I had an experience that I know many other people shared. There was at Adhisthana an extraordinary atmosphere. Very, very difficult to describe. I felt it a little bit even, I happened to be in Hungary when the news came through, but even then, even before I got the news, I sort of knew something had happened. And I felt, especially when I got to Adhisthana, words fail me, an atmosphere, as a fizz in the atmosphere, a very, very subtle, delicate energy that was not located anywhere. I remember Parami saying that it was as if Bhante had become universal. And it was extremely positive, joyful. That was weird that, the time we'd lost our great teacher, there were no tears, there was no sadness, no sense. Well, of course there was sadness in a certain sense, but on another level, there was just a sense of joy. Bhante had become what he really was, if you like, something much more. And I think that he gave us, in his death, another teaching. He showed us that death is the great going forth into the great beyond, if you've prepared yourself enough. And I, for one, am doing my best to prepare myself. And I hope that when I die, there'll just be a little bit of joy in the atmosphere and a little bit of a sense of, something bigger is there. I hope so. I'm doing my best. But death, I think, is the most profound teaching there can be. And for me, it is the basis of my spiritual life. Thank you.